This is going out live right now, but it will be in audio form for next week. But I wanted to bring on my special guest, Ishmael Reed, who is a playwright, novelist. He's the author of The Shine Challenge 2024. And you can tell I got all these gremlins talking here. Let me bring on Ishmael. Actually, Ishmael, let me fix this one thing. Don't go away. And let me fix this one thing in the super. I just have to do this. All right, and do that, and save that, and then I think that corrects this spelling. Okay. Hey, all right. So Ishmael Reed is a noted playwright and novelist. The Shine Challenge 2024 is his new project. It's going to be at the New Eurekan Cafe, and it's going to be live. Well, actually, it's going to be online, a staged reading at the neweurekan.org. You can get tickets, and if you're watching the screen, the tickets are available there through Ovation Text. And so go to the neweurekan.org website and get it. And I'm pleased to have Ishmael Reed join me as my guest. Hi, Ishmael.
How you doing?
I'm really glad that you could do this. The PETA podcast talks about animal rights. You talk about all sorts of things in your work, but I was surprised when you feature in this play a a shark and a polar bear. And I know it's kind of a part of the satirical setup here of the Shine Challenge. And so I thought you'd be perfect to talk about your writing about the shark and the polar bear as pivotal characters in this play, The Shine Challenge 2024. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The Shine Challenge. Describe the Shine Challenge to people who don't know about Black oral traditions. What is the Shine Challenge in your own words?
Well, I think, Emil, we get two storytelling traditions in our education. One is on campus and one is off campus. And so on campus, we are required to submit to the occupations of storytelling traditions. In this sense, the Anglo occupation
Mm-hmm.
begins in the 1600s or earlier than that. If you configure or if you figure Jamestown.
Mm.
So this is just a sort of like a wink in the history of thousands of years of storytelling in North America.
Right. And
So
and it's the oral tradition, and it was the Shine Challenge deals with the sinking of the Titanic,
mhm.
and according to African American lore, persons of color, even servants, were barred from the Titanic on this ill-fated voyage. But there were these folk, I guess they're called versifiers, who insisted that there was one black on board, and this was something that was told, among in the black community, and it was heard by Langston Hughes on 8th Avenue in 1956, and then he used it as to start creating the was it would you call it a myth? What would you call this?
well, they found a recording of a storyteller who talked about the Titanic and Shine in the 1940s. Now, when I was a child in Tennessee, maybe I was 3 years old. My uncle had a photo, not a photo, but a picture, a painting of the Titanic. That was the only painting he had in the house. And that's when I maybe suspected that there was a connection between the black culture and the Titanic. And later, when I was growing up, I heard the Shine story in the projects. So this was part of the oral tradition until it was written down. Now, all of us have these, I'm sure Filipino Americans and Asian, Native Americans, all of us have a storytelling tradition that's off campus, away from the official story, Shakespeare, Bacon, 19th century English, away from the official storytelling that we get in school.
Right.
And this is just an example of one of them. And I think as Black people become assimilated, these storytelling traditions are forgotten. Now, Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes, Sterling Brown, and their descendant, people like Quincy Troupe and Amiri Baraka and Larry Neal of the Black Arts Movement, they tried to maintain these storytelling traditions because they're always under attack, which is happening right now. Now, I don't know if you read this recently or maybe in the last few days. Parents have to approve of African American literature in Florida before it's taught. So the Anglo occupation is clearly in a state of panic in the face of diversity. So I think what happened, what drew my attention, one of the reasons I was drawn to this, reviving the Shine story, is that I talked to 3 generations of Black people, and they never heard of it, including a member of the younger generation, a really hotshot filmmaker, Hollywood filmmaker, who came to my house. I asked him, had he heard of it? He hadn't heard of it. So I said, we have to be careful to preserve these stories because it's not unprecedented that storytelling traditions get steamroller over or suppressed. This is what happened to Native American cultures over the last 200 years. Some of their languages are disappearing. Storytelling tradition. Matter of fact, Carla Blank and I edited from Totems of Hip Hop because I visited Alaska and I was taught to interpret the totem poles as books, pictographs. They tell stories, and they're vertical, like some Chinese characters. So I thought that they were merely pictures, but they tell a story. And the Mayans had writing. So writing in this hemisphere didn't begin with the Europeans. And so some of their stories and some of their storytelling tissues. So we did an anthology called Totems of Hip Hop, where we printed a translation of a story about a giant rat looking for a bride, probably thousands of years old. And the last person who spoke that language died. So this could happen to all of us, because especially now where there's panic in the light of diversity.
Right.
And they're insisting that their stories be the official stories. So anyway, I wanted to do this. There's also another version of this. Actually, it's the familiar version that was done by the what do you call that thing? One of the downtown theaters, the Worcester Group. The Worcester Group. I think it's still going on. I don't hear much about it. New York Times wrote a big piece about it. But this was a storyteller or an actor who was talking about toast. These are stories were called toasts. Nobody knows why they're called that. And he was just doing a series of them. George Clinton, I'm collaborating with him on a project right now. He had his own version of Shine, Swam On, and that was the straight version, one of the many versions. What I've done is I've taken about 35 lines of a version that Langston Hughes heard in 1956, and I've drawn out some of the issues like Edwardian values, metallurgy, class, race, all the different issues. I expand upon them. And so I take those 35 lines and I expand them into a 99-page script.
and it's a full play. It's a courtroom comic drama that's surreal. You mentioned racism and classism and Edwardian values, but one thing you do also insert is a a definite sense of anti-speciesism,
Mhm.
which I don't know if was intentional or not, but this is the PETA podcast, and
Mhm.
we're talking about animal rights. But when I read the script, I said, I have never seen speciesism taken on so directly as in this play, where you cast or you write about a shark who is a key witness and a polar bear. Uh, how do you fit all this into, as you put, the issues of racism and sexism and Edwardian values?
Well, first of all, in African American folklore, animals have speaking parts. And so if you look at Song of the South, for example, what the Disney
Right.
product that was derived from Joel Chandler Harris's listening to black informants on a plantation. He was another one of these ethnologists. You see, we have to protect our material from ethnologists who claim them.
Right.
Just like these guys from England went to Nigeria and took all the loot and took it to England, British Museum, and the Nigerians say, "Well, we want the stuff back," and the British Museum they're saying, "Well, we'll lend them to you." Well, while the French said, "We'll give them back," but Joel Chandler Harris wrote these stories down, and I study Yoruba, and I think that these are probably West African informants who were working on this plantation. So he wrote them down, and in these stories, animals have speaking parts, and these stories are meant to, and they're African because they're didactic. They give they're proverbs. The Africans, I studied the Africans, according to my teacher, use proverbs or to teach their children, and so you'll get morals, of Tar Baby and Brer Fox and Brer Rabbit and all these different animals. A discussion. The other reason I have these animals as thinking beings, first of all, Native Americans uh, refer to all of nature as people, as mountain people. All they feel that they are equal to humans. I mean, some of at least one culture I studied. And then when I did research for this short story that or novella that Audible published, I found that Descartes was one of those who gave a justification for animal cruelty against animals, because his I think for therefore I am. Only humans could think, and animals are inanimate objects or like machines, and you can do with them what you will. And the people who use animals in experiments and torture animals, some of these scientists get their justification from Descartes. So I was studying Descartes, who has been accused of paving the way for cruelty to animals because they're not considered sentient beings.
Right. But you take the opposite side. You
Yeah,
you take the side of the animals.
yeah.
And I've never seen it. I've read a lot of your work, much of your work. I've never really seen that side. So when I hear a prosecutor say, "I have no questions, Your Honor. I'd look like a fool subjecting animals to interrogation. They are just things without consciousness. There is no difference between them and any inanimate object."
Well, that's
Eh,
Descartes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have your character Polar Bear Sam, who's a polar bear, say, "What makes you think you humans are so special? I've seen dying seals in better shape than you humans." I mean, when I read that, I said, "Oh my God, Ishmael has written an animal rights play."
Well, I didn't look at it that way, but I was influenced by some of the research I did on the philosophical attitude toward the Cartesian attitude toward animals, and I think those I think there's recent, well, maybe not recent, but research that shows that animals are sentient beings.
Of course, yes. Well, I mean, you say, uh, and you talk about, Polar Bear Sam. He's sort of like the biggest mouthpiece. But what were you when you were writing it? Were you thinking like the animals? Were you thinking about the animals? And where was your empathy level there?
Well, I think, I wrote a novel which came into criticism because I had uh, animals with speaking parts. The Terrible Threes ends
Oh,
with animals engaged in conversation with humans. This mythical. There's always been a rumor that there's a land beneath Haiti, and I have all these animals and humans characters in the novel engaged in conversation. And then after the novel was published, they did find a continent beneath. I don't know whether you know this. They found a continent beneath Haiti. So there was ridicule about that. That I was giving animals speaking parts. But this is world folklore. I mean, I think problem with the Anglo criticism, which is on decline and under challenge, is that they're not aware of world folklore stories that have been told around the world for years.
yeah. And
So
so,
so so
go ahead.
so it's considered. Then I got into trouble for, like, in my new novel. I had the Satan humbled by Hopomok, who is a Native American figure that disappeared. Of course, I had to revive that too. Not only did I revive Shine, but in this the series of novels, I revived a figure that a mythological figure that was present when the Puritans arrived in New England. And I read where not many stories are written by this character anymore. He's a ecology figure. He
Yeah.
uh, he advised the Indians not to accept English ways, and that he was really concerned about the state of the land. And so a good Indian imprisoned him in a sleeping mountain. There's still a sleeping mountain in New England. And what I've done is I've free and hit that he would return when the land got so toxic. He would return, so I bring him back. And
Yeah.
so this is a figure that's not been referred to in maybe 100, maybe many decades,
Yeah.
because they're becoming assimilated too, I believe.
But the point that I come away with is that the animals are the moral figures. The animals are the witnesses that that free Shine who is on trial. I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
it's their testimony. They're the witnesses.
I think there's a consensus that the planet would be better off without this species, without human species. And all you have to do is read the newspaper.
Well,
Why?
that's the whole thing about speciesism, which
Mhm.
is rampant. It means prejudice or discrimination based on
Yeah.
species. And I have never seen, like I said, until I read your script, I'd never seen it so clear that here is an anti-speciesist play, an anti-speciesist work of art, where the
Mhm.
animals are called on to be the witnesses
Mhm.
to save a man who is accused of sinking the Titanic. This guy Shine.
Well, they're able to see. Well, they had, ringside seats.
Yeah. Well, I
They-
mean, it's
yeah,
kind of, some people would describe your play as kind of cartoonish,
yeah.
or surreal satire. You have a shark who had the ringside seat. He knows how Shine survived the Atlantic,
Mhm.
and then you also have a polar bear who
Mhm.
is
Well,
called on
well,
to,
well, he indicts the captain,
yeah,
the crew, because one of the you play Ismay,
yeah.
one of the builders, or
Oh
one
yeah,
of the
I
associated.
am in the play. I must say, full
And,
disclosure, I am in the play. Short,
and
a small room.
and see, one of the stories was that they were trying to compete with the Cunard line and getting to New York
Mhm.
and breaking records, and so they were going so fast they couldn't turn around. That's one
Right.
of the theories about why the Titanic sank. So the polar bear is able to witness all of this and testify to the fact that the captain was drunk. And
See,
and one of the survivors of the see, some of the stuff is factual, some is like made up. So one of the survivors of the Titanic said that the captain was drunk.
yeah, but here's the thing. The animals saved the day.
Yeah.
Because they know the truth. Even in this, fictive, mythic,
Mhm.
surreal
Mhm.
play that you've written, the animals are the moral saviors, and the in terms of speciesism, their voices should be heard. You give them a voice. That's, I think, one of the things that I got from reading the play. It's comic, but it's also real.
Well, I've this sounds silly, but I've been communicating with the birds around here because I have a very good ear and I'm able to imitate their sounds.
Yeah.
And in the afternoon, I come if the weather's warm, I come back and sit on the porch and start their sounds, and they all assemble on the
Yeah.
telegraph wire out there. And I think the morning dove is trying to date me or something because
we,
the morning dove comes out and gives a mating call.
yeah.
But
Coo, coo.
yeah,
I know that sound. I know that sound.
and so I was out of town for about 2 or 3 weeks for the play, the conductor,
Yeah.
and when I came back, they're all lined up. And there's I do a great scrub jay imitation. And when I do the scrub jay imitation, they come to the porch. They
Right.
come, they come right, So I think that I told I told I told people in the family that if I knew I could communicate with crows, I would stop talking to humans. You know, 'cause they, they're
Well,
more in-
well,
they're more interesting than some of the people I've met.
so so when you put together this play, you took the image of, or the character of Shine, who is in he's a figure in these toasts or these oral traditions that have been
Mhm.
passed on. And this is 1912. The Titanic. I said the
1912,
Satanic.
yeah. It went down
Uh,
in 1912, yeah.
Right. The Titanic went down in 1912. And 1912, if you look at Black history, it's a strange time. Segregation is getting more institutionalized.
Mhm.
Uh, in various cities. 1910, blacks were just 10% of the United States. The United States was 93.4 million. Blacks were about 9.8 million.
Mhm.
After the Civil War, after Reconstruction,
Mhm.
uh, you saw segregation come back, where even the federal government,
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson was segregating federal offices in 1913. So it
Yeah,
was not,
that's what Trump is proposing.
yeah, I mean, we're going back to 1913.
When they talk about dismantling the administrative state, that means thousands of blacks might be in the civil service might be fired.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
I mentioned Woodrow Wilson, and actually I'm right that we're
yeah.
doing
I mean,
Woodrow Wilson.
I was surprised. 1913, the segregation of federal offices was institutionalized by Woodrow Wilson, but also 1913 with the 50th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. So you see how not very far we went in 50 years. And so what does it say when these stories, what was the need of the African American community to come up with this Shine tale, which is about a black man who they swore was on the Titanic, because of well, he was there, he was with the Stokers, and then he was able to escape and was one of the survivors. Why was it important that this story be kept alive by the African American community
Well,
back then?
I think that the Titanic was a symbol of white supremacy. That it was thought to be unsinkable, invincible, and many of the people you had the aristocracy, 2%, who were occupying first class. Now in third class there were immigrants, and it was a sort of like the more money you had, the more expensive you were, and the more things you owned, you got first class, and the immigrants in third class were Irish and other immigrants from other nations, and they did most of the drowning. I mean, because as a matter of fact, in my research, I, I was directed to a book called Famine Ship, where maybe 50% of the Irish immigrants survived. And they got all kind of diseases and were dropping dead left and right. And that's why I say that I have one of the characters, the captain, saying, well, they're better off than one of these famine ships where, at least they died to serve their betters, because, and I talk about, he's challenged on whether this is Darwinism. He said, no, this is the English structure that's lasted a thousand years. Everybody knows their place.
Yeah.
So, so I think, and also the fact that Jack Johnson, Leadbelly, and some other people made that up. Jack Johnson was not a passenger and was not denied passage. That's Smith. And we have the Smithsonian version of Leadbelly singing that song during the credits at the
Yeah.
end. At the end, but anyway, Jack Johnson had proven that white men were not invincible in the boxing ring. So those things sort of line up.
Right. And so this story just grows, and part of it's myth and part of it's, uh, I mean, the in the play, Shine is his name. He writes a book, and he makes up some stuff, and he made up stuff to please his publisher. But there was no book. Shine wrote no book, right?
No, he didn't. I made that up. Yes,
You made them up.
It's part fiction and part factual.
Factual, yeah. And then this is the oral tradition. And
Yeah.
then of course, and what made me think about this for this podcast, our PETA podcast, is the animals are the heroes. They
Mhm.
save the day. They save Shine.
Yeah, they're the witnesses,
Yeah.
and they're the ones who give an accurate testimony. Some of the other people who are interrogated on the witness stand are lying. So the animals tell the truth.
If only they can talk more.
Well, I started to, and I think if I do a new draft, I might have the iceberg talk.
Oh, they
Matter of fact, we discussed this when I was in New York. The costume designer, asked her whether she could make an iceberg head.
I've seen an iceberg.
Yeah, yeah, the iceberg. In other words, all of nature is sentient.
Yeah, all of nature. Yeah.
We have there's a I don't know whether there's substantial evidence, but I've read that trees communicate.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So that would, not only are the animals sentient, but nature. So I wanted to include an iceberg, where the iceberg says, everybody's blaming this thing on me. I'm just standing there,
Well, actually, I think Saturday Night Live had an iceberg
They did. Mm-hmm.
Ed Bowen Yang, the Chinese guy, the Asian guy on Saturday Night Live, had him in an iceberg costume.
Yeah, well, I want to. I think every group that's under the burden of Anglo superiority, which is crumbling, that's the reason for the panic. As a matter of fact, I'm writing the introduction to the history of the Before Columbus Foundation, which is going to be published. We founded this in 1976, and now it's everybody thought we'd go away, but now they're mentioning our American Book Awards, the Times, the New Yorker, all that. I mean, we're the establishment now. And I was talking about how the resentment or the backlash we got on when we started the Before Columbus. They thought it was like a third world group. We were third world, and then we admitted the Irish, Jews, and Italians and others. But the point is that I was reading an old article in the New York Review of Books, and it's written by Andrew Hacker, one of these neocons.
Oh, right.
And this was I don't know how, this is, I think, in the 80s, because now there's a full blown discussion led by Christopher Rufo, who said he went to Harvard, but he went to Harvard Extension. Is there a difference?
Oh yeah, Harvard Extension is like, it's not like the real Harvard.
Well, I mean that's he was saying he went to Harvard and they found it was Harvard Extension. But
Oh,
anyway, it's panic going on. But anyway, early in New York Free Books, he said that the immigrants have to come to terms with the Anglo origin of America. In other words, it's like saying post-colonialism.
mhm.
In other words, nothing interesting in Africa happened before the arrival of the Europeans, post-colonialism. And so nothing interesting, or the land was, as a matter of fact, Robert Frost wrote a poem called The Gift Outright at Kennedy's inauguration, which says nothing was here until the Europeans arrived. And so they felt that the Native Americans were animals. I mean, George Washington said the only difference between a deer and a Native American was a difference in form.
See,
So I mean, that's what we're up against. Just saying that they talk about the Anglo or Andrew Hacker and these people. Well, I don't know why all these guys live in Manhattan.
yeah, well, there's no green space there. No green space there. No, few animals.
Something's wrong. I look at that New York Times editorial page and all these white guys there are just scolding us. And
They have a handful of black guys there somewhere.
well, they got a couple tokens like Charles Blow. He spends 90% of his time talking about Trump.
Yeah. Well,
He used to have some bite, but now he's saying, Trump, isn't he awful? Isn't he
they
so cruel? I mean, isn't he terrible? Oh.
they need more animals on the editorial board. They
No,
need
well, he said that he had to read Shakespeare so he could fit in there at the New York Times. And he said that among, because I did a big piece on New York Times columnists putting down San Francisco all the time and putting down Northern California, these different columnists. And I think he might have read it because he said when it comes to the New York Times columnists, I play the banjo. Can you imagine that?
he said that.
Yeah. Can you imagine a black man saying that? I mean, so that's the kind of tokens. Those are the kind of tokens that they approve of.
Yeah.
Like John McWhorter. I mean, I don't know if you know about this. John McWhorter writes about race for the New York Times. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
He said that blacks should be subjected to gene editing in order for them to become smart. Did you understand? Like enjoy the opera.
Say, like I said, they need people like
Well, why would the New York Times choose somebody? And I had a correspondence with one of the New York Times columnists, for quite a while, and she ended the correspondence when I said she went out. She wrote a column saying, "Well, why do black youth spend so much time on the internet?" I said, "Well, that's where they learn about their culture. That gives them a vacation from the Anglo curriculum, and they can go there." Because I learned a lot about Black history, Native American history, Asian American history on the internet, because they have on the internet, on Facebook, you get professors and scholars, not crack addicts and stuff. I mean, the image of blacks on TV, but you get scholars. I've learned a lot of some of that material. So I said, maybe these kids want to get a vacation from the Anglo thing, man, that they're subjected to and torture with in school. And so she cut off the correspondence. You know what she said? Her favorite bookstore was in London.
Oh, well, of course. Well, Ishmael, look, maybe the New York Times needs more polar bear Sams and the shark.
They need a more variety. Why aren't you on there? They need more variety on their editorial page because these guys get away with making up stuff like David French.
Oh.
Said that Asian Americans were discriminated against at Harvard, and I wrote a play. And Asian Americans say that's not true.
Yeah. Oh,
and that this was a hoax created by Ed Bloom,
right?
Who said, and Harvard Crimson trace some of the money, some of this right wing money that was backing him.
So, Ishmael, what's your hope for the Shine Challenge 2024? I'm part of this reading that, once again, full disclosure, I have a very small role. There's no
Yeah,
such thing
yeah,
as,
great. You great in both plays. You great in,
well,
you
well,
stole
well,
the
thank,
conductor. You stole the show and the conductor.
well, thank you. Thank you for that. But what is your hope for the Shine Challenge 2024? The New Yorican uh, Cafe is doing a reading, and people can buy tickets starting on February 26th is when it's available. But
No, they can
what
buy
is
tickets
your hope?
now. They can buy tickets now.
They can buy tickets now, yeah. But what is your hope? Maybe a live performance of the Shine Challenge?
I'm finished with that. We just spent a lot of money on these live performances. Nobody shows up.
Well,
So I think unless somebody gives, I don't get the kind of grants these other people do. For
yeah,
musicals, they finance these musical where these
yeah.
300-pound women be belting out show tunes and stuff. But I mean,
Well, look,
but,
Ishmael.
but listen. We
Yeah,
don't get the kind of support. I have a couple of patrons, and I can't continue to go back to them. So I think this will end with the reading that because I spend like I go to New York and stay there for a few weeks, and it costs me a lot of money.
oh yeah. Hey, look, you're
And
telling me,
plus we have to raise the money for the theater for the new city.
right?
We have to hire the engineers, the crew, and everything. Carla Blank, she has to make sacrifices. She's directing this play. She directed the conductor. It's a lot of work.
It is.
Directing,
I'm just
directing
glad.
is a lot of hard work. And so I decided since we get the elite, we get like the avant garde,
Yeah.
and we get people who are like cerebral entertainment and instruction, but we can't we just don't get, and we get ignored by the mainstream press when we go to New York.
Yeah.
They,
Well, look,
they've ignored me because I challenged Hamilton,
yeah, right.
and people were making millions on that thing, and
Well,
the media were making millions and millions on this lie, and I think that was the end of my career in the mainstream as a playwright. But I do get black support. We run Adelco Awards, which is the highest prize in black theater, and we are at the National Black Festival in Raleigh, North Carolina. We may be there again this year, where they
yeah.
took the whole cast and may be calling you to go down to North Carolina to perform
Hey, Ishmael.
if they accept us. But the black theater, black literature, and I don't know. I think this is true of all of us, all of our groups. It's not directed by us.
Yeah.
The occupation members of the occupation call the shots, and they decide the trends. Like how many more times are we going to get the color purple?
Well, that's their
I mean,
story.
what's his name? What's his name? Who am I thinking? Paul Mooney, the
Yeah.
late comedian. He
Yeah.
said, "Are they going to do a color purple on ice?" I mean, how many? And then you find, and this doesn't seem to there's no serious reaction to the idea that Harvey Weinstein
Yeah.
is an investor.
Still from jail?
Yeah, well, yeah, he gets 20%. He still gets 20%
Well,
of
I didn't know that. Well, yeah.
from his company. Well, let me tell you. Let me finish.
Yeah.
There was there's a brave New York Times columnist who said that in the color purple that these guys. Now Alice Walker says that it's not her. The film version of music were not based on her book. I guess everybody forgot about that. This is Steven Spielberg and Harvey Weinstein's view of black men, and the Times reviewer said it shows them as soulless monsters. Soulless monsters. This guy in jail, and so they determined, and they did the same thing in India. I mean, in my research for the conductor, I found that Englishmen and Germans were the ones who defined gender relations in India. I got a book on that.
Yeah.
And I was the first to criticize Spielberg. Chinese Americans were first.
Yeah.
A Los Angeles group said that he does stuff in which white men rescue minority women from minority men, and then he got in trouble for Raiders of the Lost Ark for blaspheming Kali, the Indian goddess,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they wouldn't show it in India, and then I guess it was our turn, right? So he did us.
Well, I just think that I think you're going to. I know you've had animals with speaking parts before, but I think if people see the Shine Challenge 2024, they'll see the anti-speciesist theme coming out loud and clear, and they'll see how the animals speak the truth. Which, like I said, when I read the script and I saw that the animals are the heroes here, I thought, oh, well, we're going to got to have Ishmael talk about this on the PETA podcast.
We have to keep our stories alive.
Yeah.
I mean, whether we're Filipino American or Native American or whatever, we have to keep our stories alive and resist our stories being lost, which is what's happening now. This book banning. I mean,
Yeah.
why are they banning black books? Nobody reads them.
Yeah. Well, this is the
I
thing
mean,
about.
nobody. I mean, this is really a high state, like this critical race theory. Nobody knows what it means, and this
Yeah.
idea of woke. I think this is of African origin. It means to open your eyes. Do not keep your eyes shut or whatever. It's a positive meaning. The great writer William Melvin Kelly wrote about woke in 1982, and it's sort of like interchangeable with hipness, being hip. They done
Yeah.
taken the thing, and you got Brett Stevens, who writes about black people no good every day.
Yep.
Talk about the case against woke. Nobody asked him to define the damn thing. You know what I mean? So let
Well,
me finish. When I had this correspondence with the woman who writes an opinion column in the New York Times, I said, "How do you guys make it possible for us to answer you?" You know, like
they don't want.
like when David French said that. Oh, Asian. I mean, why don't they have Asian Americans talk about? You know what I mean? Why don't they have members of the Asian American group instead of like listening in on the conversation of these guys, at the Yale Club or whatever? Why don't they have Asian Americans on the page talking about? They'll get some right wing guy like this guy from Hoover Institute.
Yeah. Well,
Chinese American on there on CNN from the Hoover Institute.
yeah. Well, that's diversity, right? That's where you get the
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it comes in
Black
handy.
guy.
It comes in handy when they get Ramaswamy. They
Right.
like that kind of diversity, or there's another guy. The head of the Manhattan Institute, which is in eugenics, is an Indian American. So
I didn't.
they like that kind of diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ishmael, I knew we'd go far afield, but covering
Well, I
very.
mean, that's me. You call me. I like nobody criticizes jazz musicians when they go far field.
That's right. Well, I didn't mean too far afield. And
I
animals in
go.
the fields. I like I said, I just love the fact that you had this really
Well,
strong.
that's one aspect of the play, but
Yeah.
there are there are other themes in the play.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Class and race and metallurgy. The thing about the rivets.
Oh yeah. 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 And you
and
can't.
negligence and alcoholism.
What about the Stokers? The Stokers, they were African American.
Well, one account says that there was a black stoker, but his one of the major books about the Titanic says that there was an African American stoker who went into the wireless room and tried to wrestle a life jacket from one of the people in the wireless room, and they both got in a struggle and fell overboard. But that's been discounted. But
Yeah.
but they were Chinese. They were
Yeah.
Chinese.
I saw you.
So I think they're probably black people working in the as stokers.
Yeah. Well, that's a key part. Like I said, the Shine Challenge 2024 is a mixture of fact and fiction. It's your imagination, but like I said, I love the fact that the animals are the heroes. The Shine Challenge. What is your challenge to?
Well, it's a challenge to the future generations to keep the story alive. That's what the challenge is. Keeping our folklore alive, because people are forgetting it. They become assimilated. They forget their origins. And I think, I think part of my role is to preserve, just like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston. She got in trouble
Yeah.
You know, the bourgeoisie didn't like her bringing up this old stuff with people talking bad and all this. You know, so I mean, she mentions rock and roll in 1942,
Yeah.
and the cultural imperialists say it began with the Rolling Stone magazine.
Oh no, no.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I mean,
No,
you know,
no, I'm saying rock and roll was
I
way
was,
before
she
Rolling
got
Stone.
it in 1942. I mean, they say, well, maybe the 50s or maybe the Chuck Berry, 1942, because she was doing her homework. She went among the people,
Yeah.
coal
Yeah.
miners and other people, and she found all these things. So I don't know if you've seen one of these white supremacist chauvinist polls at the Rolling Stone. Where they have a Mariah Carey over ranked above Ray Charles. I mean, I don't know, and don't even mention. No, they mention Nat King. They're the best singers last. Don't even mention Nat King Cole. I mean, you shit. Oh Lord have mercy.
All
And,
right. Hey,
yeah,
listen.
so I mean,
It,
we have to fight, man. That's what shoot. We have to fight this.
I know, right?
You,
Right.
you saw, you saw where he said that black people couldn't think.
Oh, who said that? Who said
Jan
that?
Winter. Jan Winter.
Oh, a young winner said that.
Yeah, he said he put out this book where he had all these white guys inventing rock and roll and just about everything else in nature. And they say, why don't you have any black people? Well, they're not articulate, something like that.
Uh,
This guy's been, I thought this guy was hip. He's been up there being hip for all these decades. And he said something like that. It's like Jiminy Greek.
yeah.
When
Yeah.
they asked about the black quarterbacks, he said they don't have the necessities. So that's the same thing Jan Winter said.
Wow. Well, listen, Ishmael. We have to leave it there. I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about the Shine Challenge 2024. It's the stage reading. It's available on demand, neorican.org. They can get tickets now by going to the website, neorican.org.
Well,
And,
what's your performance is A Star is Born. Emil
uh,
Guillermo. You'll get an Oscar one of these days
I didn't know. I didn't know.
when a Filipino American is head of Oscars. I
I didn't
mean,
know.
but
I didn't know.
I mean, they'll choose their kind of Filipino American.
I didn't
They say, well, this guy's okay.
All right. All right. Ishmael Reed, our guest here on the
Okay.
podcast. All
Thank
right.
you, Emil. Thanks. Thank you a lot.